education, work, responsibility. What we think about these depends on our worldview. Now, VCY America presents Worldview Radio with Brannon House.
And welcome. Glad you're with us on this June 5th, 2025. June 5th, 2025. And we are going to be joined by Leo Holman and Patrick Wood here in just one moment. We're going to talk about the surveillance software, the surveillance company used by the Pentagon, reportedly. I guess they got contracts with the Pentagon, this company, Palantir, and with the CIA. And it looks like, folks, so much of what Leo Holman and I were, saying was our concern is now coming to pass, that we would end up with Congress, an executive branch that builds a digital system that tracks us all. And that it might take a Trump administration to get it done. Remember us saying that this was some of our concerns? That after a Biden regime of Marxism, many people would be so happy to be out from underneath Marxism that they would allow the communitarians, big government, big business, to start implementing a system of digital control. Because they're just so happy to be out from underneath communism, Marxism. Or that it could be used to say, hey, this is how we're going to stop all the fraud. If you go back to one of my broadcasts in early 2020, remember we were under COVID and we had a captive audience, literally, all locked up in their homes. And I did a show on ID, I think it was called ID 2030 or ID 2020. I think it was ID 2020. It was held at the United Nations. And we talked about all the banks, big organizations, the United Nations, all these groups working to the Bank for International Settlements, which is the central bank of central bankers out of Basel, Switzerland. We talked about all these groups that were pushing for getting everybody chipped, or biometrics at least. Biometrics, which is consistent with 16.9 of the Sustainable Development Goals. And in 2020, early 2020, in that broadcast, I said, look, I could see where the liberals and the conservatives could both agree on this. It accomplishes what we know the globalists and the deep state, the communitarians want. But conservatives will be saying, I don't want to see all these illegals over here getting entitlements or people double dipping into welfare and other programs. We got to cut out all this fraud. And with terrorism, it'd be nice to know who's here, who's not supposed to be here. And I laid out the scenario by which conservatives could be lulled into accepting a digital tyranny state. That was 2020. And then Leo Holman and Patrick Wood and myself began to say, look, after the Biden Marxism, do we have a fear that under a second Trump term, President Trump will be led down a path to implement a digital framework that could be used for a mark of the beast type system that Kamala could never get away with. Because many people would say, are you kidding me? I don't want Kamala and the deep state having this kind of power. And yet, after coming out of Marxism and now having President Trump in the White House, maybe people would kind of go back to sleep. Or do what they did under George W. Bush. Remember, 9/11 happened, and then the Patriot Act is rolled out. And I remember being on the air opposing the Patriot Act, getting emails, as I've told you, people say, what are you, a communist? You're not a patriot? So it seems as though a lot of the things we were warning about are now coming to pass. It also seems as though World War III again today is continuing to ratchet up. Every day, folks, every day it ratchets it up just a little more. Here's Keir Starmer basically admitting that, yes, the West, NATO, these European states, they are fighting. They're fighting a proxy war with Russia using Ukraine. Listen to what he said before we go to Patrick and Leo.
Listening to what she said was this: Sky News, Mr. Speaker, Israel is fighting a proxy war on behalf of the United Kingdom, just like Ukraine is on behalf of Western Europe against Russia. Well, that was certainly noticed in the Russian embassy, because they put out a statement saying the leader of the opposition has finally called a spade a spade. Ukraine is indeed fighting a proxy war against Russia on behalf of Western interests. And they went on to say the illegitimate Kyiv regime, created, financed and armed by the West, has been at it since 2014. So they endorse, they want the detail. I've given the quote. That's what Russia said in response. She asked me what I believe in. I believe in standing by Ukraine and calling out Russia as the aggressor.
I believe in standing by Ukraine and calling out Russia. So he agrees with a proxy war using Ukraine to do it against Russia. Well, here we also now have what is supposedly a dead hand, which will launch Russia's nukes on its own. Supposedly buried deep in Russia's nuclear doctrine is dead hand, a Cold War doomsday system that's still active. If Russian leadership is wiped out or communication goes dark, dead hand triggers a full-scale automatic nuclear retaliation. No button, no delay, just global annihilation on autopilot. What this means? A single misstep by NATO could activate the end of civilization even without Putin's command. Dead hand is designed to guarantee mutual destruction no matter who fires first. The West doesn't talk about it, but the Kremlin counts on it. It's not a relic. It's been modernized, tested, and ready. So you can assassinate a leader, but you can't stop dead hand once it wakes. More great news today from Brandon House. Don't you feel great? All right, joining me now, Leo Holman, Patrick Wood. Gentlemen, welcome to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Howdy.
Hello.
All right, so Leo, Patrick, I don't know if you heard my monologue, but I basically said, look, we were saying before President Trump was elected for his second term, our concern is that after 4 years under the Marxist regime of Biden, people will be so ecstatic to be free of that they will go back to sleep, or they will give passes to the new administration coming in again when it comes to putting together a digital system. And we warned that we're going to have to be vigilant because we don't want a central bank digital currency, but neither do we want to see some kind of big government, big business system merging together to create the beast system. And we particularly said Kamala can't get away with it. But the deep state, the intelligence community, big business, they might be able to convince President Trump of this and do so in a way that would appeal to people on the right. Like I warned in my broadcast in early 2020, hey, we don't want fraud. Everybody should have biometrics, particularly those coming into the country. We want to know who's here. We don't want them double dipping. And if we want to be able to turn them off, we should be able to turn them off of any entitlement programs. So I laid out in 2020 that this could be argued where a lot of conservatives would say, great. And I'm concerned that Doge has been used that way to suck up a lot of data in the name of stopping fraud and abuse and waste. But once that data is collected, now Palantir can come along too and create a file on every American. Do you guys remember us making these predictions while Biden was still president? First, you, Leo, yes or no? You remember us warning about this?
Repeatedly, Brandon. I can remember being on your show and we were both speaking about this very issue. Absolutely. And in March, President Trump signed an executive order just a couple months ago, March of this year, titled Stopping Waste, Fraud, and Abuse by Eliminating Information Silos. Okay. And now we hear about this company Palantir that's being used to gather up data across different federal agencies. And if you read that executive order, it talks strongly about not just waste, fraud, and abuse, but improving efficiencies. Now, Patrick can tell you that beware of that word efficiencies. Whenever the government's talking about being more efficient, that's not good for us. It's good for us if the government stays a little bit inefficient, okay? But when they have a company like Palantir using AI software to become more efficient, now we've got problems because you can't argue with AI. And I'm sure we'll get into exactly what Palantir is doing a little bit later in the show, but I think it connects directly with this March executive order and Doge, like you were just saying. And I think that might have been the whole purpose of Doge, okay? Because we see that the purpose wasn't what we thought. So many conservative Americans thought that it was a great thing because it was going to eliminate the waste, fraud, and abuse. But as we see in the big, beautiful bill, there's very little cuts that have been made. They're talking about $9 billion in cuts now after the fact. Oh, well, it's like throwing crumbs. They were talking about $175 billion in cuts from the Doge revelations, and now they're thinking, oh, we might give you $9 billion. Okay, so we'll throw you a couple crumbs just to get this thing passed. But it's really not about that. It's about that other word, efficiencies, and replacing the inefficient humans with very much more efficient AI. And so this has the possibility of creating strangling government regulations where we don't want to see them, which is over our private lives. Because what does Palantir do? It scans social media, it scans your phone records, it assigns a score, determining how likely you are to be an enemy of the government. This could all be weaponized, if not by the current administration, by some future administration.
Wow. Patrick, your thoughts, please?
Well, I've been talking about this for a long time, as you know.
Yep.
I'm going to challenge the idea of who is the deep state in the first place. We've been kind of led to think, we didn't come up with it ourselves, but we've been led to think that the deep state, whatever that is, the swamp they called it, that it was existing somewhere on the left. Maybe it was Marxist, maybe it was communist, maybe it was the DEI people, nutcates on that end. Maybe it was the Democrats, maybe it was just leftists. I would challenge at this point, who is the deep state in the first place? Have we been misled? And the deep state has been under our nose all this time, starting with Palantir when it was founded in 2003.
So the deep state is a combination of big government and big business, particularly the intelligence community and big business. That's your deep state. Which is the communitarianism that this audience knows I've been writing and talking about ad nauseum. Communitarianism, communism light is what the late Henry Lamb called it. Big government, big business, corporate fascism. That's another word. We'll be right back.
There's really only one person in the world, and you've had him on the show, Dr. Mark Miller, who understands.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com. All right, welcome back. Glad you're with us. Worldview Radio, our website, worldviewradio.com, worldviewradio.com. Getting a lot of great feedback about my broadcast the other night on Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln, was he a hero or a tyrant? Was he a hero or a tyrant? We've been told how he was a great hero. Well, generally when your textbooks and historians, the educational system, the media make somebody out to be a hero, you might want to double check, because maybe they really weren't. Well, I interviewed a historian the other night who spent a lot of time studying Abraham Lincoln and bringing the receipts, lots of documentation. And what did Lincoln kill? Lincoln really helped to kill the idea that we are sovereign states that can pull out of this agreement or contract that we had with the federal government. That the powers the federal government has are limited and expressed, and the unlisted powers belong to the states and respective people thereof, the 10th Amendment. And when the federal government starts to abridge, infringe on the rights of the states, the sovereign republics, they can secede. Abraham Lincoln said, no, you can't. And some of the southern states said, you know what? We don't like the fact that you're taxing and putting tariffs on the agricultural products we produce in the South, where a lot of your steel and other stuff being done up north gets a pass. Congress was doing these kinds of things. And of course, slavery was involved in there, but it was much more complicated than that one issue. See, remember, what do we learn today? The woke folks want to wrap everything around some kind of moral high ground. They want to have some kind of moral high ground. When the majority of the people in the South did not own slaves, but you did have one of the biggest slave owners in Louisiana was a black man. You had slavery in the South. Yes, you did. Grant, didn't he have slaves? So they take this issue to try to have the moral high ground and wrap it as a one issue. Civil War was about only one thing. Wars are never fought over one thing. Never. People join wars for a lot of different reasons and objectives and motives and goals. This is what history's told us. So the other night, we did a deep dive, the first of many shows. And the reason we're in the mess we're in today, largely, is Abraham Lincoln said to South Carolina, I'm sorry, you can't leave. Said they're going to send troops cutting through Virginia and North Carolina. And those states were like, are you kidding me? Well, if you're going to behave like a tyrant, we're out too. And voila, Civil War kicked off. And Woodrow Wilson went further in helping to destroy our country. So, was Lincoln a hero or a tyrant? You can decide for yourself, but you should have the full history before making that assumption. You'll find the full program at worldviewtube.com, worldviewtube.com. Very interesting show, getting a lot of great feedback on. And we're going to be doing more shows because there's a lot of history there, folks. A lot of history. All right, let's go back to the guys, leohoman.com. leohoman.substack.com. Patrick Wood is technocracy.news. So the deep state may have turned out to be big government, the intelligence community, more specifically, the intelligence community merging with big business. I mean, didn't Google really get its start from the CIA?
It did.
When you start looking, Patrick, at all these different companies that we think about, talk about, that are in our everyday society, Americans don't realize how many of these companies were started by the CIA, correct?
Exactly. Facebook also.
Yes.
Facebook also.
And Palantir.
And
Palantir, exactly. All of these companies had the seed capital from the CIA in the first place. They had their support. The design that went into these systems was all from the CIA. the CIA has bonded with the defense industry, the technocrats running amok in these organizations. They're not elected. They have no authority to do anything publicly, but these people have run amok doing these things over the years, staying silent. You remember that movie, the old war movie, Run Silent, Run Deep?
Yep.
It's just like that, submarine.
And wasn't the CIA almost, from its conception, taken over by the communists?
It was. Undoubtedly, that was a center of communist thinking and action as well. But I have to add, it's been taken over at this point by this technocratic mentality.
But is there really a difference? Isn't a lot of this communitarianism, big government, big business merging together, what Henry Lamb, the late Henry Lamb, called communism light? So isn't it in some ways not communism, but in some ways worse than communism, but certainly a first cousin?
Well, in a way, yes, but the criticism that the communists put against technocracy historically was that technocracy was going to move men out of the picture altogether and simply rule by algorithm.
Mm.
So if man is exited society, and it's, you can't understand, well, how could that happen? Well, when individual liberty is stripped away and all your decisions are made by the machine, not by people, that's kind of the end of humanity, or humanists at that point.
Isn't that going to be interesting to watch, Leo?
I was just thinking.
When the communists start saying, you know, I really like that Brandon House and Patrick Wood and Leo Holman. Everybody should be watching their shows because they're so right. I mean, can you believe this, Leo?
No, I mean, when Patrick was describing that scenario, the first person who popped into my mind's eye was AOC. Mm-hmm. I mean, could you imagine somebody as egocentric as her on the left, and you can find her equivalents on the right? You know, their whole reason for their existence is they're out in the public eye and they have their adoring fans who live on their every word. Well, when they figure this out, like Patrick said, that they really have zero power left and all of the decisions are really being made by the machine, the algorithm, you know, I would think that's going to be a light bulb moment for them. Mm-hmm. And you might see some people rising up on the left against technocracy. I'd like to know if Patrick thinks that's possible, or will they just be so dumbed down by that point that, you know, they won't recognize the difference between communism and this new system?
I'll tell you what, some of the people that have been writing about technocracy and like in the last year, have been left-leaning organizations. Go figure. But they get it, and they're writing in context, starting back in 1932 at Columbia University, just like I do on all my books on technocracy. They're citing chapter and verse how this happened in the first place, and we have organizations like the Intercept, Axios, Verge. These people. They're starting to get it, and they influence probably as many people as we might influence on the left. We don't reach the left necessarily, but when the left gets the idea that they've been displaced from history, they're going to be flipping mad. And also, there's another group that's going to be mad too. That's all the politicians. The politicians are being displaced as well.
But has the template though has always been there, right? The template really isn't changing as far as the power structure, because it's always been the big bankers, right? Big bankers, big business, big corporations that run the show. That's who we always go to war Smedley Butler, the multi-star general, said all wars are for the purpose of corporations. Of course, we got 1913, the Federal Reserve, the federal income tax. Now they use this money, steal it from us to grow the size of government, get us into debt, rack up the government credit card. The bankers finance it. They make $1 gazillion on the interest that they know he can never pay off. And they make far more on the interest than they ever do on the principal that's still outstanding. And they're able to then continue to expand beyond America and keep that business model going with all the central banks of the world, which is why they're all together with the Bank for International Settlements. So the structure is really the same. Big business, bankers, and they would buy the politicians. Well, now they don't have to worry about buying the politicians, controlling the politicians, or the politicians going to go off the radar or off the reservation. So the power structure will still be at the top. The process is now just move the politicians out of the way and go to AI, which will save us a ton of money because we don't have to fund their campaigns. We don't have to pay them money under the table. We don't have to try to cater to their egocentric behavior and personalities, and some of them are a little cuckoo, and so they're kind of, not very dependable some days. They don't always follow our talking points, do what we tell them. Let's just move these clowns out of the way and use AI. And they're still in charge. The same group, the power elite is what many presidents called them. The power elite are still in charge. They're only going to replace the media and the politicians.
Let's say the bureaucracy as well, because we've always said that big government is a problem. Well, at this point, what Doge was about was not saving money per se. It was about reforming government to be acceptable to AI to run the whole thing and get all these other people out. This was the philosophy that Curtis Yarvin fed to Peter Thiel, for instance, and all the tech bros in Silicon Valley. His RAGE concept, RAGE, replace all government employees. That's what they said they wanted to do. That's exactly what Musk did when he came in. Started kicking people out of the government. Well, okay, so the government itself, the bureaucracy itself, is not part of this deep state anymore. It was recognized perhaps as being part of it, but now it's being pushed out. So what are you left with? You're left with the defense industry and to the intelligence industry, especially the CIA. Mm-hmm. These people apparently are running everything. They have been running it for years.
Think about this, Leo, from Donald Trump's perspective. You can't stand these judges. You can't stand them. They've made your life horrific. One charge after another, and all the court dates and attorney bills and everything they've done to him. How about he comes in, brings in an administration that just eliminates the judges? So he's like, you know what? You want payback? We'll just eliminate you guys and replace you with AI. So I guess the question I'm asking is there maybe, because President Trump is kind of known for when someone picks a fight with him, you go back, you go to the end. He's been on record, that when someone does this, you go all the way and you end the game and you win, right? Is this his way of also settling the score and winning? We'll just do away with these judges and replace them with AI. We'll be right back. We'll answer. Hello, I'm Brandon House. Hey, consider going to MyPillow.com right now and get your pet a pet bed, just like my beloved Delta has right here in my office. Not only can you get pet beds, but you can get sheets, towels, blankets, and so much more. Slippers, sandals, robes, beach towels. It just goes on and on. But please go to MyPillow.com and be sure to use the promo code B66. When you do, not only will you receive savings, but a generous percentage of each purchase comes back to continue supporting this 24/7 free broadcast outlet. We need your support. Hey, look, we're entrepreneurs, just like my friend Mike Lindell. We all need your support, and you're getting quality products at the same time. So please go to mypillow.com and use the promo code B66. Mike always has amazing specials going right there at MyPillow. So check out whatever those specials might be today. You never know. Mike's always changing it up and making new offers right there at mypillow.com. But be sure to use the promo code B66. All right, welcome back. Glad you're with us. Worldview Radio, our website, worldviewradio.com, leoholman.com, leoholman.substack.com. And Leo's got a brand new article out, Blurring the Lines, making people more like machines and machines more like people. leoholman.com, leoholman.substack.com. And then Patrick Wood is technocracy.news. Leo, what do you make? I'll go to you first, then Patrick. What do you make? I mean, President Trump is on the record saying, look, when someone comes after you, you go to the end and you win and you deal with this, all right? If you spent, 4 years of your presidency, first term, and 4 years of your private life, and now, of course, he's in his second term, so this is going to go well over 8 years, probably end up being 12 years of dealing with these corrupt judges. If you want to go to war with them, you can't eliminate them in certain ways, but you can if you replace them, right? So let's just replace them with AI. Do you think there's any personal vendetta here on the part of President Trump for some of these ideas?
Oh, I think he's all about that, Brandon. Yeah. One thing about President Trump that even some of his biggest supporters will eagerly admit is that he does have an outsized ego. So yeah, he's going to he takes things personally, and you can just tell how he reacts to things on social media, that he's not going to let something die until he gets the last word, right? Just on social media. So I think legally and politically, he operates pretty much the same way. He's not going to let a sleeping dog lie if he feels he's been wronged by a certain sector or segment of society. And in this case, I think you're right with the courts. And so, yeah, it's going to play out, I think, in a fairly nasty way.
What about not only the judges, Patrick, but what about if you're saying, hey, let's find everything that Bill and Hillary Clinton or James Comey, any of these people that he has, sparred with over the years, let's see if we can find out what all these characters have been up to, right? Is this one way, too, for him not only to deal with the judges, but deal with, some of these prosecutors even, special counsel people, even people maybe in his past administrations that turned on him? Because now you can start uncovering a lot of stuff, and pretty soon they're the ones finding themselves back in court because he's used Doge and these guys to track all the money down, every phone they own, every phone, every bank account, everything. He's used, let's say, Doge or a company like Palantir, and now he has the master file. I mean, he's he would be the 21st century J. Edgar Hoover with all of his secret files, right?
Exactly. I know. You're exactly right. At this point, it appears that Trump has been the cheerleader. Well, that's not the right word. He's not the cheerleader of technocracy and all this stuff that's going on with Palantir. But he's able to part the waters to make a path for these people to come in to destroy our lives. And that's disturbing in itself. I've always said this is not about Trump per se, but this technocrat class of people, the Palantirs, the tech pros from Silicon Valley, these people have their own agenda. It may not have been Trump's agenda in the first place, but it certainly was never, ever the intent of the populist movement to do this kind of stuff. Obviously not.
Mm-hmm.
When they figure out what's going on here, they're going to be flipped out, I think. And this could lead to civil war and big time in our country because we can't take any more of this, flip-flop back and forth. We just can't take it. And
Wow.
at some point, people are going to be so fed up, they're going to take to the streets. And I don't want to see that. Personally, I do not want to see that. I don't think you guys do
No,
either.
I don't. No, I
I
don't
don't want
either.
to see Americans killed again,
No.
like we killed them in the Civil War.
No, absolutely not. This Alex Vaca, I don't know if you guys are familiar with him.
Yes.
Who?
Alex Vaca, he is a co-founder of a cold queue, 4.5 million ARR in under 2 years, helping B2B companies scale revenue with best GTM systems. He doesn't have a whole lot of followers.
Trying to figure out what's going on here.
What's that? What I don't. Where's that audio coming from? That's Logan. He doesn't have that many followers yet, but I think he's going to grow because he's got an interesting thread going today.
Yes. Indeed.
Palantir basically, he says, tracks everything from fingerprints, bank records, license plates, phone logs, social media, sensor feeds, sensor, like a sensor, like not like censor as in someone who censors your talk, but sensor as in, you trip something, you trip a sensor on your alarm system, whatever. Documents, you name it. It can find all your secrets and then predict every action that you'll do. That's why it's not just helping governments. Palantir offers two main products. Gotham, made for spy agencies, militaries, and police. It was designed as the ultimate tool of surveillance, and provides various functionalities, find hidden relationships, maps terrorist organizations, and geospatial analysis. Now, this company, as you said, has been around for a while. I read today, Patrick, that this company was even involved in trying to track down bin Laden. That, to me, was news because I watched a documentary the other night. Have you watched the documentary that's come out on hunting bin Laden? Have you watched that?
Not yet.
It's brand new. And they were talking about using technology to find the courier, okay? They had some of these guys that they captured, and they were, I guess waterboarding and doing different techniques. And some of them just finally started talking. And we're talking about couriers that would bring stuff to bin Laden. And they had to find the courier. Out of the whole world, they have to find this one guy. They don't even know who they're looking for. They don't tell you how they did it, but eventually they figure out what they're looking for. His nationality, different things about him. And then one day they find him on his cell phone and they begin monitoring his calls. And voila, the courier leads them right to bin Laden, where he was supposedly in Pakistan. Now I'm watching this the other night, this documentary. I'm thinking to myself, okay, something's missing here. You're telling us you got to try to find one person out of the entire globe. You don't know his name. You don't know what country he's from. You know very little about him. But then all of a sudden, voila, after about 3 or 4 years, I think it was at least 3 or 4 years, voila, we've got a guy. And it's the courier. And now I'm reading Palantir was involved. Do I have that right, Leo?
Well,
or Patrick?
Look, Palantir has been the go-to choice of the CIA ever since it was founded. That's my point here. They put money into Palantir to start it in the first place. Then that was the only client that Palantir had, the CIA, for the first 6 years of its existence. That means that, well, the CIA designed the software, tested it for them, it got it embedded in all these different areas in the government and spy agencies, et cetera. That's why it's everywhere. Of course, Palantir is going to be involved with the CIA to find bin Laden. They would. And so this is, however, this is the secret that Palantir probably didn't want everybody to understand about their operation. They've been secretive all along.
Can we just say it's no longer about finding bin Laden, but could it be eventually, as I'm studying and teaching through the book of Revelation, that no one is going to be able to buy or sell without the mark, and then those who don't take the mark, they start hunting them down. Now, how are you going to find these people? Well, apparently our government, and everybody should watch the documentary on tracking bin Laden, brand new, I think, and watch it and go, how did they find him? Well, what information did they just leave out of the storyline? A guy they don't know who he is, they don't know what nationality, what country, but then after 3 or 4 years, and tracking cell phones and this and that, we have a guy, we narrow it down to, we start monitoring his calls, and voila, it's the courier that leads us right to bin Laden in Pakistan. But you didn't tell us how. I want to know, well, it must have been Palantir, I'm guessing, because this Alex Vaca guy says Palantir helped the Army track bomb makers in Iraq and Afghanistan. It even helped them avoid roadside IED explosive devices. Yes, a software helped the Army do that. Then in 2011, U.S. used Palantir to catch Osama bin Laden. Leo? So no wonder they're going to be able to track down everybody that's a Christian or becomes a believer in the tribulation and doesn't take the mark of the beast, worship, track down the Jews that are becoming believers. If you have a system this powerful, and it's only going to get bigger and better, I mean, can you imagine what's coming, Leo?
The IDF also uses Palantir. For full disclosure, we should get that out on the table.
Okay.
The IDF is one of Palantir's customers the problem that Israel had in previous invasions of Gaza was that they ran out of targets. They've got all this ability with their military, but if you don't have targets, valuable, accurate targets, you're just wasting your ammunition and bombing things indiscriminately, right? Mm-hmm. And so they contracted with Palantir, and Palantir runs its AI surveillance program on the Gaza Strip and is now able to come up with up to 100 targets per day for the IDF.
And they did this in Ukraine. When Russia invaded Ukraine, Palantir came for help, says Alex Vaca. Its Gotham software took live feeds from satellites, drones, and sensors to pinpoint Russian tanks and artillery in real time. Ukraine could see Russian units, then decide where to aim their rockets. Okay.
So this is a company that is highly integrated into the military-industrial CIA intelligence complex. They are skilled at hunting people down.
Now, let me ask you this. If you think, I don't see how, I don't see how Putin could ever agree to any deal that doesn't benefit him. Because you're now trying to cut a deal with the Trump administration that has just given how much money to Palantir? The Trump administration and our intelligence community is giving, what, billions of dollars to Palantir?
Hundreds of billions, yes.
Hundreds of billions to Palantir. And that's who's the new partner of the Trump administration. And Trump's on the phone trying to cut a deal with Russia and Putin's like, I'm talking to the guy that's empowering a company that has been blowing up my stuff and targeting me. Okay? How likely is Putin, if you're Putin, to see the U.S. as someone who's an honest broker for peace, right? Yep. When you've also been funding the Ukraine war and fighting this proxy war. Why would Putin, I don't know why he doesn't just push the button at this point. He doesn't have any honest brokers at the table. We'll be right back.
But with Brandon, it's always cutting edge stuff happening in the world. And it's not just from the political angle, because you can get that on other platforms, but it's always from the biblical angle. So you're dealing with a guy that loves Jesus, you're dealing with a guy that's very intelligent, you're dealing with a guy that is cutting edge conservatism, and you're dealing with a guy that wants to be biblical all at the same time. And so for that reason alone, I hope many, many people will not just lift up his ministry in prayer, but will also financially get behind it, because from the angle I'm trying to describe, he really is the only game in town. And we desperately need it in these last days. Can I get an amen to that?
Hello, I'm Brandon House. So in 2025 March, President Trump signed an executive order. Palantir's Foundry is now integrating into DHS, HHS, tax records, health info, everything. The company didn't turn a profit for 17 years, writes Alex Vaca, but by 2025, it's valued at $300 billion. At this point, does Putin have anybody he can negotiate with that can be a mediator to say, hey, let me try to help you cut a deal here for peace in Ukraine with Ukraine? President Trump is partnering with the company that was used to target him. He doesn't have a neutral party to come to the table and negotiate with, and he knows this. I mean, would you hire an attorney who works for your opposition? Well, would you go to conciliation with a mediator that works for the people that are trying to destroy you? I don't see this ever working out. I really don't.
Wait.
Do you, Patrick?
But wait, wasn't Trump going to be the peacemaker here? Am I missing something here? Because basically, at this point, what he's telling, the message is being sent to Putin. You only have one choice. We will crush you. That's it. There's no other choice.
So this really isn't a negotiation. This is not a negotiation.
It isn't. It really isn't. At this point, it can't be, because Trump has all the cards on his table, like Palantir, for instance. And how can Putin respond other than to say, well, you got all the cards now. What can I do? And he's going to be backed into a corner, like you said, where we risk he's going to just push the button someday.
Mm-hmm.
To say I'm out of here. I'm going to basically I'm going to be a super suicide bomber. And I'm just going to bomb everybody. I wouldn't like to see that. I hope it doesn't happen. But you can see when a person gets desperate and he has no options left, what's he going to do? He's got to do something big at that point, or knuckle under and figure, I'm done.
Leo?
100%. I mean, the other thing that blew me away was when President Trump said he was going to sign a multi-billion, trillion-dollar minerals deal with Ukraine. The day that he signed that told Putin, hey, I'm on this team over here. I now have a vested interest in making sure that the Zelensky regime comes out of this war intact, because I've got a mineral deal with him, and I need his government to help me get those minerals out of the ground. Okay? And so I think it was David Pine who said on your show, Brandon, that this minerals deal amounts to a 10-year security guarantee that President Trump gave to the Zelensky regime. And so, yeah, he lost all credibility as a neutral broker the day that he signed that. And if we want to go back even further, who approved or was totally unaware of, either way, it doesn't look good, the blowing up of the pipeline, the Russian Nord Stream 2 pipeline? That was Russian property that was used to sell natural gas to Germany and other Western European countries. That was a prime revenue maker for Russia and the Russian government. Zap, bingo, it's gone. And everybody knows that the CIA and MI6 was either one or both of them was involved with the Ukrainian SBU to take that thing out. So at this point, I think it's fairly obvious that the entire Ukrainian government is nothing but a satellite state of Washington, D.C. And Putin knows it. He knows he's not fighting Ukraine. He's fighting Washington, D.C., London,
Yes.
England, Berlin, Germany, and the entire NATO. And if that's not enough to send chills down his spine, now that NATO is not the 12 or 13 countries that it was 25, 30 years ago, but it is now a 32 nation strong alliance, including the latest one, Finland, which added an 850-mile border to NATO with Russia. That's another 800 plus miles that Putin has to put troops on to guard against a NATO invasion. And what does that do? It takes troops away from him fighting in Ukraine. So it all fits together.
And now we have North Korea's Kim Jong-un says he'll unconditionally support Russia's war against Ukraine. So
Right.
you got Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran, the countries we always keep coming back to. Is this really who we want to? Is this who we want to fight a World War III with? Because we can't do it in that many theaters.
At this point, Brandon, that is Putin's only hope, that he has a country the size of China and the technological ability of China, along with North Korea. You know, there's a lot of intelligence out there that says what Iran is doing militarily and technologically is coming from China and North Korea. So Putin, that is his ace in the hole. And the United States has nobody to blame for that but itself. We basically drove Russia straight into the arms of China, and that is this country's worst nightmare. It would be horrific enough just getting into World War III with Russia, let alone Russia and China.
So
and you throw Iran and North Korea into the mix, and that is a formidable opponent.
I'm about out of time for the radio audience, but Patrick, I don't see any other way. I don't see any way to avoid World War III now, because I don't see any honest broker to help.
I don't see it exactly. And you know, I've watched this situation for years, decades, how the United States itself, the intelligence community especially, has maneuvered maneuvered Russia into these other relationships with North Korea, China, and Iran as well. This was something that was made in the USA.
Technocracy.news, and Leo's got a brand new article. This is the one you wanted me to mention, right, Leo?
Yes.
Leo's brand new article. Blurring the lines, making people more like machines, and machines more like people. Hey, I read a report that Amazon here, before the year's over, going to be testing their robots. Their autonomous driven cars, which will deliver packages with a robot that comes to your door. People on social media are saying as soon as they see one, they're going to kidnap it. This is going to get interesting.
Yes, it's.
Yeah, I wouldn't advise people do that. Stay tuned for Crosstalk. Thanks for watching and listening. Take care. Leo and Patrick are back. Guys, Leo, do you see any way to get out of World War III here at this point?
I think we've crossed all the lines. We are, this is just my opinion, I think we're at the point of no return. I had hoped that President Trump could pull us back from the brink, but now it looks like he has failed. And if that is the case, if my opinion turns out to be true, then he will go down in history as one of the biggest failed presidencies in U.S. history.
Kremlin, no negotiating with terrorists, will retaliate at a time of our choosing. And of course, Patrick, I know we got to let you go. I think you have to get ready for another interview. But I guess what Russia does is about to be shock and awe, as they say, right?
They have to do it. They're waiting to make a response to Ukraine. They haven't done it yet. They say they'll do it on their timetable, not ours. And so who knows what's going to happen? Maybe they're going to throw a tactical nuke at Kiev. I mean, we really don't know at this point, but it's going to be serious and it's going to be big.
And Donald Trump has just tweeted, Elon was wearing thin. I asked him to leave. I took away his, you're hearing this for the first time, Leo?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Elon was wearing thin. I asked him to leave. I took away his electric vehicle mandate that forced everyone to buy electric cars that nobody else wanted. That he knew for months I was gonna do, and he just went crazy. All right. Then he tweeted, "The easiest way to save money in our budget, billions and billions of dollars, is to terminate Elon's governmental subsidies and contracts." I was always surprised that Biden didn't do it. So now
Biden?
Trump, yeah.
Whoa.
He says, always surprised Biden didn't, eliminate all of his government contracts, SpaceX and all that other stuff, right?
Yeah.
I was too. I was always thought that's kind of weird, which really shows you.
Tells you something.
Well, it tells you who's running the country. It wasn't Biden, and it still probably isn't. It's the intelligence communities. It tells you who Elon is beholding to, who he really works for.
The intelligence community does not make emotional-based decisions.
Yes, they're like, we need his technology. We want his technology. We don't care about his politics.
We don't care who the personality is behind it. Right.
This is one of the few shows, I know it sounds braggadocious, but this is really one of the few shows and networks that has got so much figured out that the vast 99% of Americans don't have a clue on. Would you agree with that, Patrick?
I wish they would get a clue. We spread this stuff out. People listen to us. We're reasonable. We're not nutcakes, and it's obvious. But nobody, they just pass over. It's like, well, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to be scared or whatever. And they just pass over it and go on with life. They'll be sorry at some point they didn't pay attention. And I tell Leo, Leo, you're to the east of me. When you see the missiles flying overhead, I want you to call me on the phone.
Give you a heads up. Patrick,
yes.
dive,
yes.
Patrick.
Yes,
That's right.
And I don't
Emergency
think
dive.
And you wonder why. All the tech bros are building bunkers, right?
Yes, exactly. Like in New Zealand, Australia, and
isn't
Montana.
Zuckerberg? He's openly talking about his bunker.
Totally. Yeah. He's probably has several at this point. One's in Hawaii.
Leo,
yes.
I know it sounds do I need to let you go, Patrick?
Yes.
Okay, I'll let you go. Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah.
Technocracy.news. Leo, just another two minutes here. Leo, again, I don't want to sound braggadocious, but look, we work hard here. You and I, Patrick, the rest of us, we work really hard here. And this is one of the few networks that has figured out so many things so many years in advance when you go back and read my books, watch my documentaries, listen to radio shows, TV shows. And when it comes to this topic, we are light years ahead of talk radio. You think Sean Hannity understands this stuff? You think Laura Ingraham understands this stuff? And if they did, would they talk about it? You think the people at Newsmax understand this stuff? And if they did, would they talk about it? The average American has no idea what's going on, how we got here, where we're going, and who's really running the country.
No clue. Absolutely. They have. If you asked Americans, what is technocracy? I don't know. If you asked 100 Americans randomly, what is technocracy? I would be surprised if you found one or two that could give you even a halfway accurate definition. Same with communitarianism, corporate fascism. Use whatever term you want to describe the current condition. You would find very few people who know what it is. And I don't think the vast majority of people in America, Americans of both parties right now, realize, Brandon, just how close we are to World War III.
Yep, 100%. 100%. And not to mention, that will involve a collapse of just-in-time inventory. That could involve a collapse of our power grid. But people will go along as life is normal, not realizing their house is on fire.
Within an hour, Brandon, of the first missile striking a U.S. city or even a U.S. military installation, the shelves will be bare. You will not find batteries. You will not find food. You will not find gasoline when you go to fill up your car. There'll be lines for miles.
May God save
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries,